I always thought that if my husband ever cheated on me, I'd know. I'd see the signs, the late nights, the secretive texts, the sudden change in routine. I told myself I wasn't the kind of woman who could be fooled. And yet, for 4 years, I was exactly that. Daniel was the perfect husband, at least, that's what everyone told me. Handsome, successful, the kind of man who could fix a broken sink with one hand and close a business deal with the other. He had this effortless confidence that made people trust him, admire him. I did, too. For 10 years, I believed in him, believed in us. I built my life around the idea that we were solid. A team. Unshakable. And then, one evening, he came home looking like a man carrying a ghost on his back. He stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, his hands buried deep in his pockets. He looked at me, and I knew. "Can we talk?" His voice was calm, almost too calm. I felt my stomach drop. "About what?" He exhaled heavily, ran a hand through his hair. "About us." That's when he told me. Not about a one-night mistake, not about a drunken lapse in judgment. No, Daniel had been having an affair for 4 years. 4 years. With Amanda. My best friend. While I was planning our vacations, decorating our home, hosting our dinner parties, he was with her. My mind raced as he spoke. He wasn't crying. He wasn't begging for forgiveness. He just stood there, like a man who had already accepted his own sentence. "Why?" My voice was barely above a whisper. Daniel looked away, his jaw tightening. "I don't know." I let out a bitter laugh. "You don't know? You cheated for 4 years and you don't know why?" I was bored. The words fell out of his mouth like they meant nothing. Like they were a simple fact, as if he were explaining why he changed the brand of coffee he drank in the morning. Something inside me cracked. A 4-year betrayal, dismissed like it was nothing more than a passing distraction. Like I was nothing more than background noise in his life. And then, 2 months after he walked out that door, after I had started to believe I might be free of him, he came back. Like a stray dog who suddenly remembered where home was. "Please," he said, standing on my doorstep in the rain, soaked through like some tragic movie cliché. I made a mistake. I stared at him, at the man I had spent a decade loving, the man who had shattered me with nothing more than a careless excuse. And I wondered, was I about to make a mistake, too? The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. The rain poured down in heavy sheets, drenching Daniel as he stood on my doorstep, his eyes pleading, his face worn with regret. I should have slammed the door in his face. I should have laughed and told him to rot in the grave he dug for our marriage. But instead, I stood there, frozen, my heart at war with my mind. "Let me in, please," he begged, his voice raw. "Just for a moment." I folded my arms over my chest, every muscle in my body taut with anger. "Why? So you can feed me more excuses? So you can tell me how she meant nothing while you slept in her bed for 4 years? Daniel flinched, but didn't look away. I ended it. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Oh, well, congratulations. That must have been so hard for you." He exhaled, rubbing his temple. "I deserve that. But I swear to you, Emily, I realized what I had, what I lost. I made the worst mistake of my life, and I will never stop trying to make it right." A gust of wind sent the rain sideways, drenching the threshold where he stood. He didn't even flinch. I narrowed my eyes. "What happened, Daniel? Did she finally get tired of playing house with a married man?" His jaw clenched. "Amanda. Don't say her name." My voice was sharp enough to cut through the storm. "You don't get to say her name." He swallowed hard, nodding. "Something happened. There are things I need to tell you. Things you don't know." A chill ran down my spine, but I masked it with defiance. "I don't care what happened to her. She could be lying in a ditch, and I still wouldn't care." He hesitated, then took a slow step forward, his voice almost a whisper. Emily, she's missing. The air in my lungs turned to stone. My pulse thundered in my ears. What? Amanda disappeared 2 nights ago. No one's heard from her. Her phone is off. Her apartment was left unlocked. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something I never expected, fear. You think I care? I scoffed, but my stomach twisted painfully. Call the cops, Daniel. It's not my problem. His voice dropped lower. They already did. And they think I had something to do with it. I took a step back. And did you? Daniel's eyes darkened, his lips pressing into a thin line. I don't know. A shiver rolled down my spine. What the hell does that mean? He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his wet hair. I don't remember that night. I was drinking, a lot. And when I woke up, she was gone. The storm outside raged on, but it was nothing compared to the chaos now spiraling inside of me. I should slam the door. I should run. But something told me, this wasn't over. The rain hadn't let up, hammering against the windows like impatient fingers, demanding to be let inside. Daniel stood there, dripping onto my floor, his presence both infuriating and unnerving. I should have thrown him out. I should have slammed the door in his face and locked it. But I didn't. Start talking, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. He hesitated, then ran a hand through his soaked hair. Amanda was scared, he finally admitted. The last time I saw her, she kept saying she made a mistake, that she was in trouble. I scoffed. You mean the mistake of ruining my marriage? His jaw tightened. It was more than that. I crossed my arms. Then where is she, Daniel? He shook his head, frustration lining his face. I don't know. But the police do. They found her car abandoned near the cliffs outside of town. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. And they think you had something to do with it? His silence was louder than any confession. I took a step back, instinct screaming at me to put as much distance between us as possible. Daniel, if you... I didn't, he interrupted, his voice low, controlled. But someone wants me to take the fall. My breath hitched. Why would someone frame you? His eyes locked onto mine, dark and intense. Because Amanda knew something she wasn't supposed to. The words lingered between us, thick with unspoken truths. The storm outside had nothing on the one brewing inside me. What did she know? I whispered. He glanced at the front door, as if expecting someone to be listening. Then, taking a step closer, he lowered his voice. Something about your father. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. My father? Daniel nodded, his expression grim. She found something. Something dangerous. I swallowed hard. This wasn't just about a marriage, or an affair, or a missing woman. This was bigger. And I had no idea who I could trust. The walls of my house suddenly felt too close, the air too thick. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself, my pulse roaring in my ears. My father? I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. What are you talking about, Daniel? Daniel glanced toward the window, as if expecting to see shadows moving beyond the rain-streaked glass. Amanda found something, he said, voice hushed. She told me she had proof, something about money being moved under fake names, offshore accounts. And it all tied back to your father. My stomach twisted violently. That's impossible, I snapped. My father was a businessman, not some criminal mastermind. Daniel hesitated, then shook his head. I didn't believe it either. But Amanda was scared, Emily. She said she was being followed. A cold dread slithered down my spine. Amanda had destroyed my marriage, wrecked my trust, but the fear in Daniel's voice was real. And now, she was missing. I forced myself to think. If she had proof, where is it now? Daniel exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. That's the problem. I don't know. But before she disappeared, she sent me a message. A single text. He pulled his phone from his pocket, his hands unsteady. He turned the screen toward me. The message was simple, chilling in its brevity. If anything happens to me, ask Emily. She knows where to look. The room swayed. I took a step back, my breath catching in my throat. What? I gasped. What does that mean? Daniel's eyes burned into mine. That's what I was hoping you could tell me. My knees nearly buckled. I gripped the back of a chair, my breath coming too fast. I don't know what this means, I whispered, shaking my head. I don't know where to look. Daniel studied me carefully, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. Think, Emily. Have you ever seen anything, documents, hidden safes, anything out of place? Memory swirled in my head like a storm, but nothing stood out. My father had always been meticulous, careful. A man who operated with a strict moral code, or so I had believed. I don't know, I admitted. But if Amanda thought I had answers, then maybe she left something behind. Somewhere only I would recognize. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced down, and I saw the color drain from his face. What is it? I demanded. He turned the screen toward me. An unknown number. A single text. You're asking the wrong questions. Stop now. A cold wave of fear washed over me. My hands trembled as I met Daniel's eyes. We're not stopping, he said firmly. I nodded, but deep down, I wasn't sure if we were running toward the truth, or straight into a trap. The weight of the text message lingered between us, thick and suffocating. My pulse pounded in my ears, but I forced myself to stay calm. We need to figure out who sent that, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Daniel nodded, his jaw clenched. Whoever it is, they're watching us. They know we're looking. I swallowed hard. Then we don't have much time. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of memories, conversations with my father, the way he used to keep certain documents locked away in his study. A sudden realization struck me. The study, I whispered. My father's office. He never let anyone inside. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Do you still have the key? I hesitated. Yes. It's in a box with some of his things. I kept it after he died. Then that's where we start, Daniel said, already reaching for his coat. Let's go. As we stepped out into the stormy night, a dark sedan sat parked at the end of the street. Its engine was off, but I could feel the weight of unseen eyes tracking our every move. A chill ran down my spine. We weren't just searching for answers anymore. We were being hunted. The drive to my father's house was tense, every shadow stretching longer, every street lamp flickering ominously. I clutched the key in my hand like a lifeline, my breath shallow as Daniel kept one eye on the rearview mirror. They're still following us, he muttered. I turned, heart hammering. The dark sedan from earlier trailed us at a careful distance. We need to lose them. Daniel gritted his teeth. Hold on. With a sudden swerve, he turned sharply down a side street, tire screeching. Another turn. Then another. Finally, the sedan vanished from view. We didn't stop until we reached my father's estate, the towering house looming in the moonlight. Inside, the air was thick with dust and memories. I led Daniel to the study, my fingers trembling as I inserted the key. The lock clicked, and the door creaked open. The room was untouched, a shrine to a past I never questioned. I stepped inside, scanning the shelves and desk. If he hid something, it has to be here. Daniel checked the drawers while I ran my fingers along the books. My hand stopped on a thick volume of financial records. Something felt off. I pulled it out, revealing a hidden compartment behind it. Inside was a black leather folder. Daniel opened it, his expression darkening. Emily, this is it. The documents inside detailed offshore accounts, shell companies, and payments bribes, extortion money. And at the center of it all, my father's signature. I stumbled back. He was involved, in everything. Before Daniel could respond, the sound of a door creaking sent a bolt of fear through me. We weren't alone. A shadow loomed in the hallway. A figure stepped forward, Detective Harris. But the cold look in his eyes told me he wasn't here to help. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Your father was a smart man. You should have left his past buried." Daniel moved in front of me. "You were in on it." Harris smirked. "And now you know too much." I barely had time to react before he pulled a gun. But Daniel was faster. With a swift movement, he lunged, knocking the weapon aside. A shot rang out, splintering the bookshelf behind me. Chaos erupted. Daniel wrestled with Harris, and I grabbed the folder, my mind racing. I had proof. I had leverage. But we had to get out, now. Daniel gained the upper hand, pinning Harris to the ground. "Run, Emily." But I didn't. Instead, I grabbed the gun and leveled it at the man who had just tried to kill us. My hand shook, but my voice was steady. "It's over." Harris laughed, blood trickling from his lip. "Not even close." Sirens wailed in the distance. I held my breath as flashing lights bathed the study in red and blue. Someone had called the police. It wasn't over. Not yet. But it would be. As officers stormed the house, I clutched the folder to my chest, feeling the weight of the truth settle over me. My father's sins had nearly buried me. But I wouldn't let them. I was done being in the dark. It was time to bring everything to light.